Chris, we weren't getting a chapter until next week for the Marshal King, but we have chapter 2, which gave us a ton of general world exposition, which I really was happy about. But it one thing I'm gonna say is I don't know why in the translation they're calling him Jimu. I don't really plan on going with that at all, just because I don't know if this girl's name is Mira or Maria then at some point, or what's going on with the translation, because I mean it's clearly set in America, so Jim just made sense to me. Unless we have an official that it's Jimu for some reason, I'm gonna stick with Jim, just because it's literally set in Wild West America. So I don't know what exactly is going on with that in this chapter. It might just be a translation thing, but we know that he had set off to go join the academy, and it's even shown that, you know, part 1 is going to be him going to the academy, which it makes sense if he's going to go be a marshal. It just makes sense that he would go to, you know, it's essentially go to the police academy. And it's just in this world where it's got its own exaggerated aspects of the fiction, and we actually got information in the verse today about how powers and whatnot, and just like the structure of the lore, obviously why the series is called the Marshal King for one. But the whole chapter begins, there's as you would expect, characters want to pick a fight with the main character because he is the son of a famous outlaw, which is another thing that was interesting to see in the chapter. That's very clear, I would say, from, like, we don't have an exact timeline, but we have a definitive top of the verse in a character unnamed but known, and then a top of the verse weapon. So the golden arms, as far as we're aware, are not the very strongest weapon. The whole Excalibur gun is the strongest one, and if they said that nobody has been able to use it and live, and that's why nobody, like, it's protected, but nobody has even bothered to try and go after it because it just seems impossible to use. I would assume if M. Godspeed was that powerful, he probably could have, like, if he was like the top, he probably could have went and just done it himself. I'm still wondering if maybe he just was in charge of like a specific desert, not like the whole country style of things. I don't know. That's still something we haven't gotten to yet. We'll probably get to that style of world exposition within the first few chapters, maybe within the first, maybe within the first volume, or maybe that'll be what volume 2 or something is about. We'll see a little bit into Jim's backstory in regards to his father, just because I would assume that's when we're gonna see more about just the M and Jim's connection, and what kind of got him to the point where he was going to go after his dad. Why is he obviously fighting for the law if he's going to if his dad is a big criminal? And there's like a vibe in the chapter that was really interesting, because I'll get a little bit more to it once when I go about this quick draw match he had with this girl. But there's like a moment in the chapter where he almost has like a evil bad guy tone to him, where he's planning some big switch. I'm assuming that's not the case, and that it's, we're gonna stick with the fact that he is going to be staying as a villain, a hero hunting villains for the sake of the law. Just because I would imagine that if he ends up switching, and he ends up switching to become a criminal, why would it stay being called the Marshal King? Because the Marshal King, as is mentioned in the chapter, was the name of the first marshal and the person who wielded the strongest gun. So that's what he's going to be striving to eventually do. And if why wouldn't it just be called like Desperado something? And if it was going to be a switch at some point where he's going to switch and be a bad guy, because it would make sense to me in the idea of the story and tone if there's like an arc at some point where he ends up becoming an outlaw. That feels very tied to Wild West cowboy style law enforcement, where it's like there's a period where you're framed and you have to actually run from the law until you clear your name, and then go back to fighting the law, crime with the law. I'm just a huge fan of the extra tone in the series for stuff like that, just because it really leans into the dedication of what the series has to offer and what it's going to be doing. But we have a bit where this little girl goes and kicks Jim right in the balls and like runs off with him and takes him to this class because they're, you know, I guess they're switching up and not switching up, dividing up as you would expect in classes and in groups within the school. And there's a bit like one of the guys says he's 42 and he's been here for 8 years, so I wonder exactly what the full graduation requirements are, because it's not like high school where you go for 4 years, or college maybe where you go for like 4, 8, or whatever, how many years depending on how fast you get through. You know, there's gonna be some guy that are like, 1 for me, but you know what it is, it's clear like you get in as an adult, but like you stay in depending on how long it takes you to become X quality or X good. And then obviously as it's mentioned, the super, hang on, what was it called exactly? I don't want to mess up the name. Super magnums, I think. Yeah, super magnums. I thought of super arms for a second. Super magnums that I was sad that the guns weren't colored, but maybe like I said in my last review that they weren't colored because specific things will be colored and not just them in general, which again makes sense because we did get a lot of cool stuff colored in this chapter. A little bit less in the previous one, but I think for the better. I think it should be used sparingly so it's not overdone and it keeps the style fresh. But we have everybody kind of setting up. Don't get too many characters in this, but we do get a hype character, this girl Mira Abigail Black. That's what I'm saying. It's like I feel like Maria would make more sense because they messed up Jim's name in this, so I'm just wondering. I'll go with Mira for her for now, but I'm sticking with Jim until I figure out exactly what the case is going on with that. But she's like the hyped up daughter of a guy like a Commander Century Black who was a great Marshal, and she's a first year, but she's already the fastest draw in the school. So I wonder exactly what are the different areas are, because I would guess something like quick draw skills would be one of your primary things. It maybe not like the number one, because you know, as being a law enforcement officer, you know, knowing the law is going to be the most important one, but I would imagine that your ability to handle your weapon is going to be at least top 4. But she is just, you know, as you would expect, much more powerful character, flexing on big fodder Goonma guy who is going to eventually probably become an ally, but for now he's going to be the big stupid brute dude who clearly is outmatched. Because if she's the fastest in the school, and I think this makes sense that Jim is gonna not really have many rivals in this scenario, because he's clearly superhuman. It's not even like an argument, because we have in this chapter a whole bit about how kind of the powers in the verse are gonna work. And it seems that like just these types of guns, these special guns, if you're able to unlock your innate human talent, you are able to use these guns. So just like the requirement, I don't know if it's like you have to unlock it first, or if it's like you use it and if you don't die in using this weapon, it causes you to unlock the, you know, your genes. But at the same time, it's clear it's one of those things where it's superhuman skill, like traits are locked up within anybody, but you only some can draw it out, and then you know, you have to meet these requirements in order to use these guns and then to graduate the academy. And they said like if a normal person tries to use them, it will just blow your body half apart. And even with like Excalibur, nobody except the first Marshal could use it, because just using it would you could die. And then like the recoil and everything, just like this raw power, the uncontrolled, because they said when it was first used, the guy like it wiped out the continent, and probably is what just turned it into this desert, is my guess. It just probably burnt everything. It just nuked the entirety of it explosion wise and burnt the entire landscape, and that's why they're all in more of this desert style world. And I really like that setup, because again, it's something that it's an automatic identifier in the verse. I've mentioned that in other series. I'm always a fan of when you have something that automatically tells you just from a design or how a character uses a power. It says, okay, this character automatically has to be within this circle of importance because of this identifier. And like you look over like other series like Galaxia right now, anybody who has a dragon tail, like that's an automatic identifier of somebody who's going to be important to events going on. Kyoshi has the crest exorcism, that is some form of high, like, we know it's a high level thing that characters have. We don't know the exact requirements and qualifications in full, but we know that not just anybody can use it. And that's the same thing in the Marshal King with these super magnums. So not a normal person can use it. And even if you are, I would imagine, a very honed and trained gunman of what, I guess we don't really know what the different kinds are, because sharpshooter is going to be one, but there has to be different gun styles that we're going to be seeing besides just people who draw and shoot really fast. I imagine there's going to be some form of really cool stylized version, like a gunblade character or some guy with like a shotgun tomahawk. I'm trying to think of like weird classifications that can still be within the verse. I don't know. I really want to know the style, because even at the start of the chapter, just as like a moment, when the guy guarding the academy, he's just sitting on another one of these like little cool walker gun mechs. It's so neat. But as I mentioned, like he's getting in a duel with this girl, and it's like having this whole thing where it's like she wants to just kind of test him out. She says like, even if you lose, I'm gonna protect you, because she's just interested in him. And he does this fast like double body move, where not double body, but like double kind of intent move, where it looks like he just messed up, but he turned his gun faster than her, but like waited, shot right when her bullet was passing, and then had his bullet go directly behind hers, so it caught up, just because I don't remember the exact way that it's described, but it's like it's able to essentially leech off its velocity and then accelerate in through it, and it destroyed her bullet. And it's just like, it's like a high version of how, when Robin Hood shoots an arrow through another person's arrow. It's just a pure flex, but she doesn't even notice. And I think, again, that's for her. It's one thing too for her to really note is she isn't like, oh, I'm one of the older people, I'm also one of the best. And she is somebody that was mentioned as a first year, so hers is also off of a lot of talent and capability on top of, I would imagine, hard work and skill. But he has the same thing to a higher degree. But that just, again, makes sense because we know who his dad is. We just don't know the extent in full of what Jim can do. I'm guessing that he's going to be fine using one of these guns, because he either, just from what we saw in chapter 1, either he's already used them before and he's unlocked these genes, and that's why he was able to do some of the things that he presented in the first chapter. It's lugging around that giant piece of steel and using it as a weapon, or that's his innate stuff already, and once he unlocks his actual like talent and genetic capabilities, he is going to be way more powerful than anybody else around him. And you're only going to have these other characters who are like anomaly super characters and like high level bosses that are going to be dangerous to him. And granted, we don't know the extent of the power still. Like, we do know obviously the super weapon Excalibur was capable of destroying a continent, but we don't know like where things are going to be sitting in terms of like weird abilities and skills and whatnot that are going to make the verse harder. As far as we know now, there's gun firepower, like high explosive danger. I don't imagine there's going to be any characters right now that are like, I can shoot a bullet that has the compact eruption of a volcano. Maybe we'll actually have something cool like that. That's actually something I feel like is logical, where it'd be like, my gun shoots and it swaps space, but it's not where the bullet is, it's where I want the bullet to be, so the bullet immediately appears there. It's maybe we'll have some random cowboy and it's a little borrow from Bleach and he's just coming over. I don't know, but as it were, we get that really cool exposition. This first dude looks very sheriffy, old style copy, where he's just this big bearded like buff dude with a cowboy hat on and a bunch of deputy stars. I also really love it when I really like when the mangakas give specific wording for the sake of hype in the verse, because they mentioned that the Excalibur gun is deep off in a like holding spot, but held in a 400,000 steel ton frame that's holding this thing together, which is just, it's just badass to really think of the level of effort they would have had to go into. Like, you probably are gonna have some really cool character or characters that did this, like maybe the engineers that initially made the super magnums. I guess they'd be gunsmiths, but they're probably something in between that would be in this verse. There's some form of like extra, it's not just going to be gunsmith, it'll be some mega gunsmith wording, super law gunsmith, and they forge these guns, and that's why they're able to do stuff. Or maybe these guys could borderline metal bend with how much their mastery over craftsmen with anvil and hot steel is. But it's really cool just in setup to know what the main character's goal is, to get this, you know, to get the girl set up in the chapter, to get verse description in both lore and explaining about like powers and whatnot, and seeing what exactly we're going to be dealing with. I thought this was a really good follow-up. I mean, granted, it's going to be bi-weekly, and I guess it's going to be set after this, because I thought it was going to be bi-weekly going from this last one, but I don't know exactly. Maybe it's going to be weekly until they get to a certain point and then jump from there and go bi-weekly. But as far as I can tell right now, we have everything, I would say, except for the rival, whoever Jim's rival is going to be, and then we'll probably start moving into some of the first enemies, like the first time Jim's going to start flexing on people, and they're going to see that he's not just for show. And then I'm hoping within volume 1, maybe like early volume 2, we could get, or maybe like end of volume 2, we could get a first like actual opponent for Jim. I want to see exactly what the extent of his capabilities are, but I also want to see a opponent in the verse that isn't just going to be, you know, an early series goon that'll be around for like a chapter. I want to see somebody that has some lasting existence, because it will also tell me what the villains in the verse are going to be like, because I can't really count Godspeed, because he was somebody that is hyped up, but we only saw him at the very start of the first chapter, and throughout the rest of the chapter it was mostly Jim running into the, you know, fodder and whatnot, and getting a more showing of him rather than giving us even a noteworthy bad guy at the start, because it didn't need to be. It already had one that we named, so it was more of the mystery following that. And I would really like to see what the verse is going to, like I said, be presenting in the first display, because the first the first display is the one that's going to gotta really hook a lot of people. And I want to just see some super scummy criminal. I want to see just a generic bad guy criminal, but he's one of those ones, he's like 8'5", and he's got I don't know, he's got a gigantic arm, like some grotesquely big arm, because he's inbred or something, and he has a cannon that he puts on there, and it's, I don't know, something badass like that, where he's just some big slow hulking behemoth early series enemy that is very beatable, but he's dangerous. I think that'll be really cool. But anyway, other than that, tell me your thoughts are about chapter 2. I thought it was really fun, and I'm looking forward to the next chapter, and I want to see exactly who the first, like I said, rival and the first couple adversaries are going to be, because it made sense this is going to be, you know, the female lead, but that to me is not what I'm looking forward into right now, because I would assume, just based off of this interaction, she's going to be a character that has lots of potential, lots of capability, but she's not in the spot right now, because that's going to be Jim's spot for probably the first whole volume, while we learn about this main character, which I'm looking forward to as well. But anyway, other than that, tell me what your thoughts are about chapter 2, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.